As you sketch elements like roofs and floors, the geometry you create will often maintain associative relationships to the surrounding geometry. For example, if you use the Pick Walls option to create your sketch lines, the shape of your roof or floor will change automatically if the walls move. This is only one example. There are other modifications that we can employ to create intelligent relationships among the various parts of our model. In this movie, we'll highlight some of those topics and we'll also explore a few other miscellaneous roof making techniques. Some of these we've already seen, so it's more like a summary. We have a gable roof here, we have a hip roof here. These are both done with footprint roofs. So is this shed roof over here is also a footprint roof. Let's do something with this shed roof here at the end, though, to make it match kind of what's going on here and here with these two roofs here. Notice that the walls are actually following the shape of that gable roof, but here in the shed, they clearly are not. This is actually a pretty easy change to make. I'm going to highlight one of the walls, press my Tab key to chain select all four walls. Now remember, it's been a while since we've done chain select if you've been following the movies in order. So don't move your mouse away, because if you do, you haven't selected anything. You've got to pre-highlight one wall, tab, then click to get all four walls. Now they're actually selected. And then over here on the ribbon, you can choose Attach Top or Base. And when we click that tool, it will prompt us to select something in the model. And I'll just go ahead and select the roof. And you'll see the walls jump up and attach themselves to the roof. Now, what's important about that is we talked about these relationships being associative and maintained. So this roof was drawn with the Pick Walls option, like the roofs we did in the previous couple movies. If I were to move this wall, you'll notice that the shape of that roof moves along with it. Furthermore, if I were to take this roof and actually scroll down here and adjust its slope, so instead of a 3 and 12, maybe I make it a 5 and 12, and go ahead and click Apply, you'll notice that that new attachment we just made of the walls stays maintained as well. So there's sort of this circular relationship between the walls driving the shape of the roof and the roof driving the height of the walls. So those two work together. Now let's direct our attention over here to these two flat roofs. A flat roof is also generated by a footprint roof. So we draw the footprint roof, and to make it a flat roof, we simply make none of the sketch lines slope defining. So I'm going to select this roof, choose Edit Footprint. You can see the four sketch lines. If you were to click on any of them, none of them have defined slope. And you can tell that just by looking, because none of them have that little triangle symbol. So in order to create a flat roof, that's all you have to do is you sketch your footprint and you just make none of the edges slope defining. But I've taken this roof and taken it a step further. Notice when I pre-highlight it, it's got those four red little square handles at the corners. These are little shape handles that are associated with flat roofs. You won't get those if you pre-highlight a roof that has slope-defining edges. So if you look at the roofs that actually have slope-defining edges, when you pre-highlight them, they don't show any of those little squares at the corners. And furthermore, if you select them, the only tool that you see here is Edit Footprint. Contrast that to this one. If you select it, in addition to Edit Footprint, you see this panel here where you have all these shape editing tools. So what shape editing tools allow you to do is do things like add points, for example. And I'm going to add a point in this roof and change the elevation to, I'm going to do something very dramatic, to maybe 4 feet and click it right there. And when I click the Modify tool, you'll see that that basically turned this roof into a pyramid. So when I started this file, I did something much more subtle. And when I click on that roof, you've got this tool is how you can get in there and actually modify these points after the fact. So the Modify Subelements. And if I click on one of those little squares, you can see that one's set at 4 inches and this one's set at 0. So there's a very subtle little drainage slope going on in this roof. Now, if you want the 4 feet and the pyramid shape, you can certainly do that. And so by actually adding these points, you can sculpt a pretty dramatic roof. Now, what I'm going to do is actually undo the placement of that point, and I'm going to go to a section view because I want to show you one more thing about this modification that I made. So remember, at this side of the roof, let me just show you Modify Subelements again. The point is at 4 inches, and at this side of the roof, it's only at 0. But furthermore, what we've done here, let me zoom in even closer, is you'll notice that the insulation component that's used on the roof here is actually thicker on this side than it is over here on this side. So I'm going to select this roof, and you'll notice that instead of using the generic 12-inch roof that we've been using in other movies, this one is actually a more complicated roof that has metal deck and EPDM, and I'm going to edit its type. Now, when I edit its type, I can then edit the structure. And if you recall the movies on creating walls, we looked at a similar dialogue to this when we were looking at the wall structure. And like walls, the roof has a core with a structural component, in this case metal deck, and then it has some insulation, and then a finished material, the EPDM. The insulation component has a checkbox right here, which makes it variable. I want to summarize all the parts and pieces here because there's a lot of moving parts to make this work. To do this technique that I'm showing here, you need three things. You need to create a footprint roof with no slope-defining edges. Next, you need to go into the shape editing tools and add points at different Z heights. In my case, I did 0 and 4 inches. Doesn't matter how much, just got to have different heights. And then finally, you need to edit the structure of the roof assembly and make one of the components variable. Typically, that's going to be your rigid insulation because you'd want to keep your structure flat like I have here and have the insulation taper to allow for drainage. So if that's the kind of roof structure that you need, those are the tools that you have that you can use to accommodate that.